Hi, long range hunting. Today we're going to be talking about solids for hunting. Now, I'm addressing this because I deal with this a lot, especially lately. There's been just a massive, especially in the last week, of arguing between people that I've seen and been dragged into, that people are trying to say that solids perform better than a good cup and core lead bullet. Quite honestly, no, they don't. They cannot outperform it. It's basic physics. Now, a lot of people don't understand bullet construction. They'll look at a number or marketing. And first, to break that down, marketing is marketing. They could be selling a pile of dog poop, and marketing is going to tell you that it's the best dog poop you've ever seen, that you simply can't live without it. That is marketing. It's for sales. Does that actually translate to the truth? No, it doesn't always translate to the truth. Now, are there certain products that do live up to that hype? Absolutely. But in this case, no. Just to dive into the basics of this, a solid bullet is solid copper. Now, there's different designs that different ones have done with larger holes, different ways to try to weaken it. But ultimately, you're still dealing with a solid projectile. That copper is harder than lead. Now, the lead does have a jacket over it, and that's going to give it a little bit more resistance required, but it's still going to open up much better and much easier. The solids require higher velocities to open up, and they don't do it as well. Even on the bullets like Lehigh Defense, which honestly is the best one I've seen as far as solids, and it still can't compete with a lead core bullet. But what they've done is, if you look at their bullets, they actually have these lines down them, and what that is when they made that bullet, they had material that they didn't place in there, and it weakens it. So you're not trying to go through that entire thickness to expand. It's basically breaking a thin piece of copper, and then it's expanding and pushing against those leaves. But those leaves are still thick copper. Again, still requires more force. That requires a higher impact velocity and impact resistance. So it doesn't give you the same type of range. If you're talking short game, it's still not going to give you the same type of performance. If you're talking long range, it's going to flop. Ultimately, in order to utilize them, especially long range, you're going to have to go with a high recoiling cartridge that can lead to other problems of recoil sensitivity, stuff like that. But you have to get really, really high velocities out of those projectiles just to get decent performance. Now, I know people are going to say this. Oh, well, it kills. There's blood loss. There's 2 holes. So what? Any projectile fired fast enough through an organ is going to result in a fatality. Just plain and simple. It doesn't even have to expand. You can kill with a full metal jacket. That does not mean it has good terminal performance. So the simple argument that, oh, it died, is invalid. Everything will kill. Bows kill, and bows don't even have hydraulic shock or hydrostatic shock. It's just simply by cutting. So just simply the animal dying does not mean it's good. All bullets kill. Just get that out of the way. It's how effective they kill that dictates whether it's good performance or bad. Now we're going to dive into this real quick and go a little bit more into construction and how it works. Now, copper bullet solids, as they're called, or monolithic, is going to work like this. Now, there's 2 ways they work. One, it's going to go through. It's going to have that little expansion here with the copper petals, and this unit as a whole is going to go through there. Well, here is your maximum permanent wound cavity. Permanent wound cavity is what happens when that bullet goes through. It's that crushing path that the bullet goes. So you're going to have your temporary wound cavity, your hydrostatic shock or hydraulic shock with a bullet, and that's when you see the gel expand and it causes its own damages there. But what you're left with after it collapses with hydrostatic shock is your permanent wound cavity. So this is your permanent wound cavity. This is a lead core bullet, like the ones I use that are really good, like ELD Match, Burger Hybrids, etc. What's going to happen with these, and it goes to penetration. Now, a lot of people overestimate penetration requirements. They say, oh, well, it won't go through a bone if it's a lead core bullet, especially a thin jacket, like ELD Match. And that's a load of crap. In North America, the animal with the thickest bones is a bison. And I killed mine with an ELD Match bullet, and guess what? It blew straight through those bones like they weren't there. Destroyed the entire chest cavity at 110 yards, so high velocity, and it dropped dead on the spot. So the thing they say is, oh, it won't go through bone. Yeah, it will. It's not steel. Bones are not that tough. People tend to overestimate what animals have, and that's why they run into a lot of problems of poor performance. People try to say because it doesn't have the same type of weight retention, it doesn't give the same performance. Let's say this one holds 100 to 98% weight retention. Well, again, all you're doing is getting that little permanent wound cavity, and the amount of surface area you bring, the wider that expands, the more transition of shock, hydraulic shock and hydrostatic shock. Now, here's our lead core bullet. Now, contrary to popular belief, they don't explode. What people say with a match bullet, they say, oh, well, it just exploded on impact. Not necessarily true. They don't, quote unquote, fall, crumble to dust. They don't just come apart. What's happening is that projectile is going through, and if it's a light enough bullet where it's shorter, or you have a high impact velocity where that bullet is going to expand. So your bullet originally is about here, and it's expanding, and basically you're expanding until there's no more bullet left. Like this, these were pistol ones on steel target, now it's what's left. You're expanding until there's no more bullet left. So it's not that the projectile blew up, the projectile expanded until there was no more bullet left to expand. Now, that's not a bad thing. One, you're getting your maximum transfer of energy and wounding. So you can see there's a much larger one. This is an easier one to expand. And what's going to happen is that bullet's going to expand, and you're going to get that nice wide wounding. Well, these tips, as it expands, so as that bullet's expanding back, those tips are going to break off. They're the weakest point. It's not like a steel target where a object in motion meets an unmovable force. What's happening is that bullet is hitting that steel, and because it can't go through it, it's simply opening up, expanding to the very rear, and then fragmenting from there. Now, with an animal, are these pieces going to break off? Sure. However, that's not a bad thing, because what's going to happen is this bullet is expanding, and let's say it's over here at this expansion, it's reached that maximum width, and these tips are going to break off and create their own wound channels. Now, this bullet doesn't stop expanding because it keeps expanding until it reaches however far it's going to go, depending on the weight and length of that bullet. But what happens is as soon as these are breaking off, this is still expanding, and so it's giving it a little bit narrower. It's getting that added penetration. It's expanding. Those pieces are breaking off, and it keeps doing that. And so even though you lost, let's say you had 50% weight retention with this, that 50% gave better performance than this 100%, because the bullet is still giving that wide wound cavity, and as it breaks, it's allowing that piece to continue to penetrate through, and as it expands more, it gets back to that width, pieces break off. And so this little diagram right here is what you're going to see with that. So you have the entrance, it starts to expand and open that cavity. Here's your bullet, and as it expands, these pieces, because again, they're still an object in motion, and they haven't met anything that's going to prevent it from stopping like steel. And so these are going to go out like a shotgun blast, and those fragments are going to end up going through that chest cavity and creating their own wound cavities. So it's basically like taking a bullet and a shotgun blast at the same time. Then from there, you have your permanent wound cavity that's going to continue to be this wide cavity going through there. And I'm going to cover hydraulic shock in a second. and the wound cavity that can get. We're just talking about hydrostatic shock right now. Now, if we go over to this solid right here, I'm going to be talking about this. Some solids advertise that they'll fragment too. These leaves will expand and break off, and then those go through, and then the shaft itself, the rest of that bullet goes through as kind of like a penetrator. Not the same thing. Now, will these petals create their own wound channels? Sure. So you are getting that. But it's depending on how many break off, it could be up to 4. But this is effectively now just a full metal jacket. It's not going to transition that energy. It's not going to expand. It's just going to blow through and not give you good performance. So like that gel I showed you where it just penciled right through, that's what this is going to do. So it's not giving you any added performance. It's just continuing through. Here's what it would do. So you're going to have a smaller wound cavity. It's going to open up, and then those petals are going to come off, and this piece is going to continue giving you a smaller one. So you're not getting a whole lot of transfer of energy here to begin with, and then you're basically getting a few pieces going to the side just to cause small wound cavities. And again, those aren't causing anything crazy, but they are aiding. And then this piece is just penciling through. So does it give you good performance either way? No. You've gone from this on a solid to this as your permanent wound cavity. And if you look at the comparison of these compared to this, it doesn't compare. Now, as I mentioned, there's something called hydraulic shock. Now, you have hydrostatic shock and hydraulic shock. And basically what those are, to use the analogy of rubber bands in water, so if you take a giant rock to a pool, you get up on the high dive, you drop that rock, what's going to happen? It's going to hit that water and it's going to cause a displacement of that water where there's basically going to be an air pocket around. That water is then going to collapse back in around that rock and it's going to be surrounded by water. That's what you're doing. You know, whether it's a human or an elk, we're all water-based mammals. So we have elasticity. And that's what it's happening. So when the bullet hits that animal, it's hitting a water-based mammal and it has an elasticity point. Now, organs like the heart, lungs, and liver don't have elasticity. And that's why that shock, that transfer of energy causes damage to them, because where the body will stretch, the actual organs themselves won't. Now, the guts have elasticity to them. You know, Native Americans used guts for bowstrings. They used pieces of that to make bowstrings, all kinds of stuff. But they have elasticity, which, you know, is one of the reasons why gut shots are so bad. It doesn't cause the same kind of damage. It causes meat spoilage, etc. And we'll touch base on that in a second when we get down to, you know, some lies and myths about this stuff. Now, hydrostatic shock is where if you take a rubber band, and a large one, and you expand it slowly in all directions until that rubber band is structurally compromised. You've got fibers starting to break. It hasn't completely come apart, but it's damaged. That is hydrostatic shock. You're getting a quick stretch, it's causing damage, and then it's collapsing back. So with a permanent wound cavity, again, that bullet crushing through, when you get that transfer, what's going to happen is it's going to stretch through that elasticity. It's going to cause things to rupture, arteries, organs are going to bleed, and then it's going to collapse back, and you're going to be left with that permanent wound cavity. So when you're talking under 2,200 feet per second, or even over with a bullet that's not performing well, you're only achieving that hydrostatic shock, and so the size of that permanent wound cavity plays a big factor in that. Now, if you're over 2,200 feet per second, and you get good performance, that, like the match on here, that wide cavity, that massive transfer of energy. But what happens with hydraulic shock is that same temporary wound cavity, because of the increased velocity, is going to stretch beyond the elasticity point of that media. So to take that rubber band, you're taking that rubber band and pulling it in every direction until it explodes. Now, this results in the chest cavity of hydraulic shock. It basically turns the entire chest cavity into soup or even puree. It's incredibly destructive. So it's one of those things that just because a bullet penetrates doesn't mean it's good performance. You want that wide permanent wound cavity. And when that hydraulic shock collapses, that permanent wound cavity is larger. In fact, when you go to look at it, effectively when you hit that hydraulic shock and everything blows up, you're taking the temporary wound cavity and basically turning it into the permanent wound cavity. So that's where you see those larger woundings in the bullet diameter is hydraulic shock. Now, to show you the difference between these, I'm going to go to episode 1 where I used Barnes triple shocks in a 308 versus a 168 grain ELD match. Both out of the 308, same velocity, same impact velocity, same target, everything, hide, meat, everything was identical. Now, what you're going to see is a very, very big difference in transfer of energy and permanent wound cavity. Now, the Barnes had very little transfer of energy or a permanent wound cavity. The permanent wound cavity measured 7/8 of an inch, and the temporary wound cavity was only around 6 inches. If you look at the ELD match on this, pay attention, the table actually moves. It literally gets picked up and shifted. The gel, meat, and everything, it goes flying in all directions and had around a 12-inch cavity. So again, it was the same setup. The bullet on the ELD match, they both blew through. However, I did manage to catch that ELD match bullet, and guess what? It was perfectly expanded. So not only did it penetrate straight through that gel block, meat, everything, and again, wonderful performance, it did it better than the Barnes equivalent. So here's the thing. That's a real side-by-side comparison, and guess what? It can't compete. You cannot get that type of transfer. If you look at other videos of mine using ELD match burger hybrids, you get performance like this where you can see it's breaking buckets, it's breaking tables. That is a massive transfer of energy. Now this one is at 926 yards. This is done with a 215 burger hybrid of a 300 PRC by a buddy of mine, CJ. Now you can see that's a massive hole. It literally liquefied the entire chest cavity and blew it out the side. Anchored it dead on the spot. I mean, again, there was nothing left in that chest cavity. So that's the type of performance you want. It's completely obliterating that animal's internals and it's not going anywhere. Another issue you run into, whether it's the solid that breaks the tips off or simply if it doesn't meet expansion or only does a little bit when you're getting down on those lower velocities for that bullet on the solid, is you can get penciling and necking over. You saw penciling earlier where it zipped through, and that's where the tip is clogging and it's not expanding. It effectively becomes a full metal jacket. And then necking over, where that bullet is actually tumbling. It'll go in, it starts to have that displacement, and then it starts to tumble and change directions. I've seen this turn out really bad where it's completely changed directions, and it can result in lost animals and, again, poor performance. Now, there's also a cost to it that people don't realize. So solids, if you look at solid bullets, they have these little marks here. And what that does is because there's so much friction on the rifling, they do that to reduce friction so that you can actually get a good velocity. A solid bullet does not smash in like a lead core bullet. So in turn, that equals less barrel life. You're getting more friction, especially with how hot you have to run them, that at those velocities, even with a lead core bullet, it would be a barrel burn. Now you're increasing drastically how much barrel wear there's going to be on it from running a solid. Now, are you gaining any advantages with these? No. 1, decreased barrel life. 2, they cost more than a good lead core bullet. Cost of a barrel, if you're gonna go get a gun re-barreled, is gonna run you anywhere from probably $800 to $1,200 depending on what you're looking for. You've got gunsmithing fees, you gotta buy the barrel. So you're effectively costing yourself more money for less performance. Now, are there animals I would use solids on? Sure. I can count them on one hand, because there's not a lot of animals in the world that require that type of performance where you're going to need a lot of penetration and it's going to be high impact resistance. Elephants, solids are great for. If you're going for Cape buffalo in Africa, solids are a good option. You know, if you're going for hippos, again, solid option. Anything besides that, pretty much not. And even those animals you can kill with lead core bullets. So there's a time and a place, and even then there can be better options. So, I mean, do I wish that they had a great option that I could recommend for those poor people that are stuck in places like California where they can't use a lead core bullet because of morons? Yeah, I wish there was. But to date, they all have different designs. They've all done different things. But ultimately, with the exception of Lehigh, which all of them kind of compared to, you're really not getting performance that would make anybody who doesn't have to use them want to switch realistically. If somebody tells you they're better, it's two things. Either they're lying to you, marketing, or they just lying, or they don't know any better. Now, I want to have some fun with this because this is actually coming from several conversations lately and ones in the past from a couple years ago. Being somebody who knows a lot about this, I get dragged in. I get tagged in stuff. People ask me about it. I end up explaining, whether it's explaining, ballistics and we get into something, or if it's specifically to go and debunk what somebody's saying on that. There's some that have stood out over the years, and even as recently as yesterday, that are absolutely mind-boggling that people believe this crap. Now, what a lot of these guys do is they'll try to utilize something to convince you. Now, with a military background, stolen valor comes to mind. If you follow guys like Don Shipley, you're going to see that a lot of these guys try to use, they'll say, oh, I should teach you martial arts, or I should teach you shooting and do it my way. And they say, well, why do you do that? Well, I was a Navy SEAL. I was a Green Beret. And people automatically go, oh, well, maybe I should listen to him. He clearly knows what he's talking about. But is that true in those cases? No. People don't realize certain things are invalid. Even if, they are in that correct job, that doesn't necessarily mean it. Like military. I hear all the time, well, I was in the military overseas, so I know what a bullet does. No, you don't. Military's taught to shoot. Plain and simple. You go to a range, you learn how to shoot somebody. Does a grunt get terminal ballistic lessons? No, they don't. Now, if you get into like special operations stuff, do some of those guys get it? Sure. But the average military person who even sees combat, they don't get ballistic training. They're running full metal jackets. The only ones who are running match bullets like what we hunt with are snipers. But it's one of those things that just because somebody served in the military doesn't mean they had special training in terminal ballistics. But they always want to say that. Oh, I was in the military. And people go, oh, well, he must know what he's talking about. Not necessarily true. I've heard a number of different off-the-wall ones. One of the weirdest was, just as an example, this isn't even on solids, but just an example of how these guys try this. A guy posted, a friend of mine, a 20 millimeter, and said, here you go, Jared. And this guy comments and says, oh, well, I don't need that. My 308 will put a hole through a deer the size of a coffee can. No, doesn't do that. He was saying it was like you took a coffee can and just sucked it out. And so I asked the guy, I said, what are you basing it off? And he said, experience. Now, the fact that he didn't come right out and said, he just said experience is trying to divert, which automatically told me, I already knew this, but even confirmed he was full of it. I kept pressing, he said, sniper experience. I said, oh, well, you were a sniper. No. My cousin was a SWAT team sniper, and I used to go watch him shoot paper. Well, shooting a paper target and shooting a hole through somebody or an animal doesn't translate. And he's like, oh, well, he had a picture from Vietnam. The guy's head got blown up. Okay, well, again, cranial evacuation is different than a hole in the chest. And he ended up getting really mad. But the guy didn't know what he's talking about. But he was trying to say that he had experience and then mention snipers to try to validate and stop that from going any further. Now, most people, again, are going to go, oh, he must know what he's talking about. However, to somebody who does know what they're talking about, it's going to throw up red flags and be like, you know what? You're a liar. Now, one from the last couple of days is absolutely hysterical. I don't understand why this guy even thinks this. He even claimed, he's like, I'm not an expert, but you should listen to me. Well, if you're not an expert, then why should I listen to you? Well, I'm old and I've killed a bunch of animals over hunting. Again, that's another one that's used. Just because you're old and done something for a long time doesn't make you an expert. If you suck at something for 50 years, that doesn't automatically turn you into an expert. It means you sucked at something for 15 years. So with experience, it has to be quality experience and knowledge. The guy doesn't understand ballistics, period, but he derailed his own argument. He said that he shot an elk. He took it in and got it x-rayed and said that from the wound, from the hit on this elk, that there was microfragments of lead that went all through the meat as far as a couple feet. Now, that right there threw up red flags. Because one, I've never heard of anybody who has taken an elk in and got it x-rayed and paid to have it x-rayed. That's red flags. Because, I mean, again, I've killed elk. I've never seen that. And so I kept pressing and called him out on that. So then he came up with this story when I said it made no sense. Now, as he tried to explain it to me, he debunked his own argument. And he still didn't realize this. He said that he shot the elk with a Barnes solid copper bullet. Not a lead bullet, a copper bullet. He then butchered the animal. Then he took the animal he just butchered, he took 70 pounds in of meat and took it to a butcher to grind. Why would you butcher it twice? Makes no sense. You're already paying the guy. But as strange as that is, it could happen. Then, when he got that hamburger back, that ground meat where everything's been ground together, he found lead fragments. So then he went to a friend who's a veterinarian. They laid out all the meat and x-rayed it, and it showed that there was pieces of lead throughout the meat. Yes, it's that stupid. Now here's several problems with that. One, it's a load of crap. One, he shot it with a solid copper bullet. So there's no way for lead to get in there from his animal. Two, if he took it to a butcher, a lot of butchers cut corners. And a lot of times you don't even get your animal back. They just throw it up, weigh the animal, and give you a certain percentage of meat. And then everything's ground through the same thing. I've seen butchers do shady stuff where they've had gut shot meat. They don't clean it. They don't remove the section where it's been shot. They do a lot of crazy stuff. So if there was actual lead fragments, if this story is true, it wasn't from his elk. It was from another hunter in a butcher that just didn't do their job. And his taking it to get x-rayed, again, even if that happened, because it's stupid, it's hamburger. You can pull it apart with your fingers and look. You don't need an x-ray machine for it to waste money, or even if they did it for free. And x-raying hamburger meat doesn't show how far it travels from the bullet hole. So everything he said, it had so many holes through it, it could be Swiss cheese. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But this is what he's trying to use. And people, when he says, oh, well, I x-rayed it, I know this happens, they go, oh, well, if he x-rayed it, it must be true. No, it's a load of just absolute crap. Now, this next one, I'm going to do a demonstration for and show you this because it's just that stupid. Now, this next one is a doozy. This guy, a doctor, who, I'm not even going to go into that. This guy is absolutely ridiculous. A guy that I have never met anybody who is that full of crap. But what he's trying to say is a bullet, his solids, that a bullet that causes the minimum amount of damage is going to give you better terminal performance. That's a load of crap. And so they make their bullets to open up a minimum amount. So you're already setting yourself up for failure because you're not trying to achieve better expansion. I called the guy out on it, and his argument is that a collapsed lung with a smaller hole will collapse that lung faster. Now, for those of you who don't know what happens when a lung collapses, this is a Ziploc bag full of water that I'm using for this demonstration. So let's say this is your lung and this is the body. Now, when you get a puncturing wound like a bullet or a knife, what happens is that air starts to escape. Now, as you breathe, it's going to push air out, and the air is going to fill the volume around, preventing it from expanding. And so continually as it tries to breathe, it keeps getting that air and blood around it, and it collapses the lung. Now, saying that a smaller hole with less damage is going to cause that to be faster is absolutely stupid. My wife knows zero about ballistics. She doesn't even hunt, and she knows that's BS. So we've got our body, and we've got our Ziploc bag. My wife's going to kill me for this, but it's for science. So if we go and puncture a small wound here, so it's just a little hole right here, and then we go to squeeze it like it's breathing, how long is it going to take? And you can see it's not coming out that fast. How long is it going to take before it exits? It's going to take a while. I mean, I'm squeezing this thing, and this thing's still full. So saying that a smaller hole is going to collapse that lung faster is absolute load. Now, if we take this same hole and open it up, what's going to happen? It's going to get all over my bench, and it's going to collapse that lung faster. Let me clean this up real quick, and I'll get back to you. All right, I'm back. I've cleaned up. And quite honestly, again, that logic is so flawed. I can't believe anybody believes that. Besides, even if you get a bigger hole and just that hole brings out that air, or in this replication, water, it'll collapse the lung faster. Now, if you get a good bullet and you achieve hydraulic shock and it blows up everything, guess what? That is far superior to both those other options, a big hole or a small hole, because then there's no more lungs. Guess what happens when there's no lungs? It can't breathe. What happens when its heart's obliterated? Massive blood loss, goes into shock, dies. And that's even without dropping it with CNS. If the cavity's large enough that it shuts down the central nervous system, just without that, it's still more fatal. So to say that you can get better performance with less, it's absolutely false. So guys will try different reasonings. End of the day, if this was a court of law, facts matter, provable facts. So stick to provable facts, not opinions, not just because some guy says it. Look at the physical evidence. Look at ballistics gel. Look at all this. Performance is performance. If you want animals to die quickly, you want good performance. You want massive expansion. You want that. Again, penetration, people overestimate it so much. Bones are not that thick. You can blow through them with even the thinnest jackets on, like the ELD match. It'll blow right through them. It'll give you good performance. The times when it does fail, it's not actually the bullet failing. It's the operator. They failed to understand the construction of that bullet and how it's going to work on that animal. I've talked in other videos, an elk and a white-tailed deer only have a difference of 6 inches of penetration required. Seriously, whitetail, 3 inches to the vitals, and an elk is 4 inches. Whitetail, vital depth of 10 inches, elk is 15 inches. You got a 6-inch difference there. We're not talking about astronomical amounts. Just to break this down in closing, don't listen to the whole solids are better. Quite frankly, they're not. The whole argument about, lead ingestion is also crap. Because guess what? When you go to butcher that animal, all you have to do is cut away the damaged section from entrance and or exit wound, and the chest cavities where most of that's going to be. Remove that, and that removes it. If any gets in the blood, guess what? You age it, drains the blood, problem solved. It's really not that difficult. Now, everybody claims 2 holes. I hear it all the time. 2 holes, 2 holes, 2 holes. You need 2 holes. No, you don't. That's why they want that penetration to blow through and get 2 holes. Guess what? A bullet going through and causing an exit hole is due to lack of performance or too low of velocity. Plain and simple, it doesn't give you anything. If it's exiting, it still has potential energy that wasn't dumped. So it does not give you good performance. Now, the reason people want this is one from archery, but guess what? If I'm archery hunting, yes, I want 2 holes because we're only dealing with blood loss. And other people want it because of poor bullet choice. They don't get the same type of performance, and so they need that blood for track jobs. Guess what? You shoot it with the right bolt like ELD Matchburger hybrids. If they don't drop on the spot, they're not going very far. Just plain and simple. Even the ones I've had to track, it's never been an issue. Even with one side with it not exiting, it's still been massive blood loss. I mean, red carpet. So that trauma, even on one hole, if everything's obliterated in there, it's not going far. So, quit using crappy bullets. Quit trying to say that a copper bullet is superior because there's no evidence to it. It's basic physics. Everybody be safe out there. I hope this is educational. I hope this helped you. Hope it cuts through some of the BS. Everybody stay safe out there. Happy hunting. Not that hard, people.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notification bell so you won't miss out on any future video. And happy hunting.